the Israeli Knesset, the parliament, voted in favor of passed two bills that would basically prevent the UN Agency for Palestine Refugees from operating. What can we say about this move by the Israeli government? What it means, of course, the effects that it's going to have, especially in Gaza. Yeah, Ali, how are you looking at this? This, the latest in this series of attacks
Yeah,
on the agency.
it's interesting because remember back at the beginning of this genocide, the United States led the attack on UNRWA
Yeah,
when they suspended the funding on the bogus pretext that um, several UNRWA workers had been somehow involved in October 7th, and none of that was ever proven as far as know. And certainly, if it was in any way proven, why would you cancel funding to the whole agency? It was
right.
always just a pretext to attack UNRWA. And then we know that UNRWA's European vassals followed suit, and then they gradually reversed course. But at that point, remember, Israel wanted to come up with some alternative to UNRWA, which they controlled or that was under their thumb. And so that's when we saw this business about the humanitarian. Who remembers the pier that floated away? We had so many discussions about that and what it's really for. And now it's just, debris floating somewhere in the Mediterranean, probably. But also, there was the attempt to promote organizations like World Central Kitchen. We talked about that at the time,
Mhm.
which has close ties to the State Department and to the US government to promote them as sort of an alternative to UNRWA. But let's look now. So, what happened, as you said, Nora, of course, that Israel passed these bills that may outlaw UNRWA within territories controlled by Israel. Let's look at what Matthew Miller, the State Department spokesperson, said in response to this, and this would have been at Monday's uh,
Right.
State Department briefing on October 28th.
We have made quite clear to the government of Israel that we are deeply concerned by this proposed legislation. The secretary raised this in the letter that he sent with Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of Defense, to Minister of Defense Gallant and Minister of Strategic Affairs Dermer a little over 2 weeks ago. As he made clear in that letter, passage of this legislation could have implications under U.S. law and U.S. policy. That remains the case. Look, UNRWA plays a critical, important role in delivering humanitarian assistance to civilians that need it in Gaza. That's not the only role they play. They play an important role providing services to Palestinians in the West Bank and throughout the region as well. But they really play an irreplaceable role right now in Gaza, where they are on the front lines getting humanitarian assistance to the people they need it. There's nobody that can replace them right now in the middle of the crisis. So we continue to urge the government of Israel to pause the implementation of this legislation. We urge them not to pass it at all. And we will consider next steps based on what happens in the days ahead.
So, just very quickly, I want to hear what other people have to say, but it does strike me that this change of tune and suddenly this passionate defense of UNRWA is
Mhm.
coming just a few days before the election, when the Harris-Cheney campaign, the Kamala Harris-Dick Cheney campaign, is trying to convince people that it somehow supports
Mhm.
Palestinians, and while sending Israel the bombs to keep massacring them. So that's one element, is just disingenuous. And then, but I don't know. I mean, we also know, and we had this discussion with Leila Al-Arian a couple of weeks ago, that the U.S. has been um, entirely complicit with Israel's knowing starvation of Gaza, including northern Gaza. So how can you trust anything these people say? You simply can't. But it is interesting that he did put on the record that UNRWA is irreplaceable. and that I don't think we've heard that language before. But I don't know
Yeah.
what do other people think of this.
No, I mean, obviously, Matt Miller is disingenuous to the core, and nothing he says is anything but, party line defense of genocide. And he tries to put a very, eloquent spin on it sometimes. I think the timing is a factor. I think that the Harris campaign, the Biden White House, wants to maintain this facade, the charade of, being the more so-called empathetic party to, to Palestinians experiencing a genocide, being funded and armed by the White House. But also, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's because there is still some chance that the International Criminal Court could issue warrants, and it would also implicate, I mean, if we look at, past genocides and crimes against humanity, the spokespersons for those regimes that are inflicting the genocides are also held accountable and culpable. Um, I mean, I hate to put much faith in the ICC at this point, because what are they waiting for? What more evidence does it need to indict not just the Israeli government and its soldiers, but also the Americans and the European counterparts and the Canadian counterparts? But maybe it's the US kind of, I don't know, maybe attempting to put some sort of political distance between the White House this week and the Israeli government. I don't know.
Yeah, it does
I don't
seem
know.
to be at least partly an electoral calculation, because the presidential election is so down to the wire. The
Yeah.
election is Harris's to lose. Like, she seems to be doing her best to lose it.